Welcome back. We're in Esther chapter 5, verse 9. Esther chapter 5, verse 9. Let's go. So we've got Queen Esther. She has invited the king, King Xerxes, we believe it is, and Haman, his right-hand man, to this banquet. And at the first banquet, she decides not to go through with her request to save the Jewish people, but decides to call for a second banquet for whatever her reason. Whether she's afraid to bring it up, which doesn't really make sense to me because she had just gone into the king's court risking life and death, literally, and prevailed. So I don't think that's it. I think it's just God. This is just my interpretation. I think it's just God just saying on our heart, the time has not yet come. Tomorrow is going to be the time for the banquet. And she's just being led. Because remember, God's working behind the scenes. The great things that you see, the tough things that you see, I'm not talking about the temptation. The devil and his demons are the ones who tempt you, right? But God will test you, and God will put you circumstances that will enable you to grow, to drop your prides, to stop thinking about yourselves, and to look up to God. A lot of people who come to Christ are on the last, in the valley. Just they've gone through it. There's been death, illness, job loss, bankruptcy, divorce, bad family situation, addicted to porn, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. They get on their knees and they cry out to God. And that's often how it goes. So God is still working behind the scenes. Remember in Genesis, what the enemy intended for evil, God meant for good. So God's working through all this, and that's the one big thing that we want to see here, among other things, but that is one central thing that we get to see in Esther. So we carry on with verse 9, and we're about to pick up with the second banquet. So Haman went out that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he did not stand or tremble before him, he was filled with indignation against Mordecai. So what's happened? King Xerxes and Haman had just gone to this banquet with Queen Esther. Haman is like, dude, I can't wait to get on Facebook and tell everybody and show them my pictures about the banquet that I had with the queen. No one was there except for me and the king. Like, I'm homies with them. We had so much fun. And he's just going to brag, and it's all about him and his pride. And it says he was joyful. Granted, they didn't have Facebook back then. You get the point. That's what it would be like today. But it says he was joyful and with a glad heart. So he was really happy and in this great mood. But it says as soon as he saw Mordecai, this is like his new sworn enemy, he was filled with indignation because Mordecai wasn't afraid of him. Remember, he wanted Mordecai and everybody else to bow before him. Who else does that sound like? Satan, right? Satan wanted to be bowed before. Satan wanted to be God. Here, Haman wants everybody to bow to him, to worship him, to idolize him, to respect him. And Mordecai's like, no, my respect goes to God, not to you. And so even though Haman just came from this event where he was literally the only person with the king and the queen, he gets filled with indignation. He let Satan steal his joy. Here's the question for you. How often are you in a good mood? You're joyful. You're loving God. You're praying. You're reading the Bible. You're having a great day. And then, bam, something happens. How often does that happen where you allow the devil to steal your joy? Now, here's the follow-up question to that, which is, what is that trigger that often steals your joy? Usually, it's one or two or three things, but there's probably one big predominant theme that tends to steal your joy. Here for Haman, it's just his pride, right? He couldn't believe that this person didn't want to worship him and idolize him. So he's filled with anger and wrath and indignation. What is it that steals your joy? Is it hopping on Facebook and seeing someone else's life that appears to be better than yours because they have more money, more vacations, better looking spouse, they have kids, more successful kids? What is that? Is that it? Is it going to work and realizing you're not going to get promoted before someone else? Is it, what is it? Is it the desire for porn, the desire for alcohol, for drugs? Is it you're living in the past and thinking about some abuse that happened to you? What is that triggering event that steals your joy? Just think about it and ask God today, right here, right now, to help you with that. Because if you can identify that trigger, then you can probably better start to understand what you need to do to overcome it. And the best place to start is praying and asking God, saying, Lord, I recognize that this is a trigger, that this is not a godly response. This is something that steals my joy, and I'd prefer joy over this, over money, over blah, blah, blah. What is that for you? So I encourage you with that. That hit me hard while I was reading this. Verse 10, Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home, and he sent and called for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Then Haman told them of his great riches, the multitude of his children, everything in which the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above above the officials and servants of the king. So he's bragging on himself. He's like, look at me. I got money. I get promotion. I got this family. I got these kids. Look at me. Worship me. I'm awesome. Emoji blessed, right? Hashtag blessed. All that stuff. Verse 12, Moreover, Haman said, Besides, Queen Esther invited no one but me to come in with the king to the banquet that she prepared. And tomorrow I am again invited by her along with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing so long as I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting in the king's gate. So he continues playing the pride game of puffing him up. Look at me. And he's playing this name game, trying to level himself up by naming and showing off his famous people that he's associated with in his life. Do you do that? Because I know people who do that. And lots of conversations are like, oh, yeah, I just had lunch with so-and-so. Oh, yeah, let me show you this picture of me with the president, the governor, the mayor, this pop singer, this billionaire mogul or whatever, right? And they're always name dropping. And have you ever stopped to think why people name drop? It's usually their pride and also their insecurity, right? They're prideful. They're saying, look at me. Look how important I am. Look who I know. Look who I have a picture with. Look who I've eaten with. And it's also insecurity. It's saying, I'm not secure enough in who I am. I actually have to associate myself with who I perceive to be better so that I can look better in other people's eyes. But don't play that name game, right? No one likes it. And the people who do like it, you don't need to be impressing them, right? You need to be impressing them with Jesus, not with who you know. Maybe you know a lot of people. That's fine. But don't use that as something to build up your esteem or for your own pride and your own ego to say, look how important I am. Right? God calls us to esteem ourselves not. If you're esteeming yourself, stop. This life is not about you being esteemed. This life is about you glorifying Jesus. And in order to do that, you serve. Now, how do we know that? Is there a model? Is there anyone who went before us and showed us? Yes, plenty of them. Specifically, Jesus. Jesus didn't come as a conquering king saying, look at me, look how rich and powerful and famous and likable I am. He came as a lowly, humble, carpenter, homeless servant. Servant. He was a servant leader. We too should be servant leaders. Is this something that you need to work on? If it is, great. And then he said this in verse 13, it avails me nothing as long as Mordecai, the Jew, is sitting at the king's gate. So he's saying all this stuff. He's dropping the name game. I know king. I know queen. Hey, you know what? I'm going to another banquet. I got money. I got kids. I'm hashtag blessed. I got all this stuff. But man, it all sucks because there's one dude out there, my arch enemy right now, is here. Right? Who is that person in your life you need to forgive, reconcile with, if you can reconcile with them? If they're no longer able to be reconciled because they refuse, then pray about the reconciliation. Or if they've passed away, obviously you can't reconcile with them, but you can certainly just forgive them and move on, because that grudge, it doesn't hurt them, it hurts you. And then because it hurts you, it hurts the people around you, because you end up being grumpy and bitter and not joyful, which is what God wants. He wants you to be joyful. Verse 14. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, let a gallows be made, 50 cubits high, and in the morning suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on it. Then go merrily with the king to the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. Right? These are the friends you don't want. So this would be a great time in your life to say, what friends are around me who I need to disassociate with, or just slowly fade away from and find a better group of friends, right? Are your friends encouraging you to go out and get drunk? Are your friends encouraging you to just be on the golf course or go hunting or fishing or doing whatever takes you away from your family and things with Jesus? Right? And I'm not saying those things in and of themselves are bad. Hunting, fishing, golfing, name your deal, tennis, anything like that. Not bad, right? Good. Have a hobby, have fun, get out. But if you're doing it too much and you're away from your family and you're not spending time with your wife and your kids or your husband and your kids or whatever the case may be, then that could be a problem, right? We want to think about our hobbies and what we're doing, our activities that could take us away. And these friend groups can be bad. So if you look around and think about your friends, you're like, are these the friends that are leading me to fall more in love with Jesus and be a better example of Jesus to my spouse, to my kids, to my community, to my peers at work? Or are they the ones who are wanting to go out and party? They're wanting to do things, that are just like fun, but away from family, taking me away from family. They're never telling anybody about Jesus. They don't let me talk about Jesus because they don't want to hear it. Be careful with that friend group. Mordecai, he had awful friends here and an awful wife who both all said, nah, just go hang this dude, right? You got a problem? Don't reconcile, don't forgive, don't ask forgiveness. Don't, make friends with this person. God calls us to love our enemies. Here, his friends are saying, go and kill your enemy. All right, bad advice. Watch your friend group. So, lots of good applications today. One is be careful name dropping. Another is look at your friend group. And another is finding that thing that may steal your joy, identifying it, and asking God to help you conquer it. Lord, thank you so much for all that you do. Help us to esteem ourselves not to puff ourselves up and have people worship and idolize us, but to glorify you, Lord. Help us to look around at our friend groups and surround ourselves with people who build us up. That doesn't mean we don't go out and witness to and love on people who don't know you, Lord. But if we're just spending all our time like hanging out with people who don't know you and we're not telling them about Jesus, then that's a problem, especially if they take us away from family. So Lord, help us. And if there's any triggers, and there probably is in each of our lives, that steal our joy, Lord, help us to identify that trigger and help us to overcome it in your name. Amen. This podcast brought to you in part by the Portfolio Protection Store, where smart investors go to protect their life savings from stock market losses. Visit our website to register for our webinar, theportfolioprotectionstore.com. The webinar is about portfolio protection and safe money ideas for ages 50 plus. Visit theportfolioprotectionstore.com. Located in Austin, Texas, license number 2887886.